So limiting friction means the maximum force required to bring an object into motion. So that's what limiting friction stands for. So let's understand all these three things in more detail, starting with the static friction. All right, the first thing about the static friction, that static friction is a self-adjusting force. Static friction is a self-adjusting force. Let's understand this, how static friction is a self-adjusting force. So let us assume that this vehicle needs a force of 100 newtons to come into motion. All right, so suppose if I apply 1 newton, then the static friction will apply, means the frictional force will become equal to 1 newton, causing a cancellation of the force, hence no motion. Suppose if I apply a different force that is of 20 newtons, for example, if I'm applying over here, see 20 newtons, the static frictional force becomes 20 newton and hence cancelling my force and hence no motion. And if I apply 99 newtons even, for example, let's apply the 99 newtons, still the bike is not coming into motion because the static friction adjusted himself and it got adjusted itself, and it's also applying 99 newtons, hence causing my applied force to be cancelled out and hence no motion. And if I apply 100 newton evens, the bike does not move. So let's try it out. So it's not moving because I have reached the maximum limit of this and hence it's not moving. If I apply a single newton or a single millinewtons even more, then this bike will start moving. It's a very simple thing. So if I apply 100 newtons, what was its maximum capacity to sustain? So that is the static friction. All right, so first point is it's a self-adjusting force. If you apply 1 newton, it becomes 1. If you apply 50, it becomes 50 till it reaches its maximum capacity. All right, so that's what static friction is. First point is clear, right? Now second point, static friction is equal to external force until it reaches its maximum capacity or the limiting friction. Now the next term is limiting friction. The maximum value of static friction is called limiting friction. So let's understand what is the limiting friction. As I told you, the maximum value that it can sustain means after that force it starts to move, that is 100 newtons. So 100 newton is the limiting frictional force for this object. So limiting friction means maximum value of the static friction, means after that force the vehicle starts to move. Means it is the maximum force. For example, the vehicle is over here. The maximum force that it can sustain, after that force the vehicle will come into motion. So that force, that maximum frictional force that can oppose the external force is the limiting friction. And one more important thing, so limiting friction is directly proportional to the normal reaction applied, and if we remove the proportionality symbol, there is a constant that comes into the equation, that is coefficient of static friction, that is mu(s). Therefore, the formula to calculate limiting friction is limiting friction equals to coefficient of static friction times the normal reaction. Limiting friction is generally greater than static friction as well as kinetic friction. And now coming to the kinetic friction. Kinetic friction is slightly lesser than the limiting friction. All right. So kinetic friction is an amazing thing. When the object is in motion, then it experiences the kinetic friction. All right. And the formula of kinetic friction is similar to limiting friction. It's like kinetic friction is equal to coefficient of kinetic friction times the normal reaction. And now there is a question, sir, how will I calculate the coefficient of static friction? It's a very weird thing. So to calculate it, let me explain you. There is another video over here, how to calculate coefficient of static friction. You can check out the video from this link, and it's so easy for you after that. And there is another method to calculate coefficient of static friction that I'm telling you in this video, and that way you will get a different method. That is, we can divide the frictional force by the normal reaction to get the coefficient of static friction. Once again, coefficient of static friction is also equals to frictional force divided by the normal reaction. So for example, if the limiting force is 100 newton, let me tell my friend to apply a force of 100 newtons so that the vehicle comes to move. Now you push, Ritik. Alright, so the vehicle comes into motion. It means he applied force more than limiting friction, that is more than 100 newtons. So the vehicle starts moving, and that's where kinetic friction comes into picture. Alright, so you learned about when my friend was applying the force less than 100 newtons, then static friction was adjusting itself and opposing the motion. When it reached the maximum capacity, still it adjusted itself and applied 100 newtons and stopped the vehicle to move. When my friend applied more than 100 newtons, means more than limiting friction, that the vehicle started to move. So this was the concept of kinetic friction, limiting friction, and static friction.